naiva shantihi papani purva janma kritani cha. If one reads the Bhagavad Gita verses sincerely and with all seriousness, then by the grace of the Lord, the reactions of his past misdeeds will not act upon him. Isn't that wonderful? Who wouldn't want to read the Bhagavad Gita then? And this is not all, this is just the beginning. Sarvadharman papebhyo moksheshyami ma shuchaha. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. So, what he's saying is that you may clean yourself daily, even if you are living by the side of the Ganga river and you're taking a bath in the Ganga river every single day. But if one takes a bath even once in the sacred waters of the Bhagavad Gita, to him the dirt of material life is altogether vanquished. मतलब सारी उम्र गंगा में नहाने के बदले में अगर आप एक बार भगवत गीता पूरी तरह effectively पढ़ लेते हैं, it is equivalent to or surpasses the merits of taking bath in the Ganga water all your life. That's how purifying the Bhagavad Gita is. Now, because the Bhagavad Gita was spoken by Lord Shri Krishna, one need not read any other Vedic literature. Only if you attentively and regularly hear and read the Bhagavad Gita. In the present age, people are so absorbed in their activities that it's not possible for us to read the entire Vedic literature. Is sufficient to take the summary study of the entire Vedanta Sutra. And my favorite verse, Geet Mahatmya, verse 6. Sarvopanishado gavo dogdha gopala nandanaha partho vatsaha sudhir bhokta dugdham gitamritam mahat. So, बहुत अच्छा एक comparison दिया है इसमें, एक example दिया है Lord Shiva ने, that ये जो गीतोपनिषद है, भगवद गीता is an Upanishad. सभी 108 उपनिषदों में सबसे श्रेष्ठ is the Bhagavad Gita, Gitopanishad. It is the essence of all the Upanishads and it's just like a cow. So अगर आप उपनिषद को एक गाय मान लें and Lord Krishna is the cowherd boy who is tending to this cow and he's milking this cow. Arjun is like a calf and all the learned scholars and devotees like yourself जो इस समय बैठे हैं भगवद गीता पढ़ने के लिए, they are drinking the nectarian milk of the Bhagavad Gita. How beautiful this comparison is, that Krishna ग्वाले हैं उस गाय के और इसको दोह रहे हैं. He is milking this cow of the Bhagavad Gita and he is giving the nectar into the mouth of Arjun, who is the calf, who is eagerly trying to drink that cow. And so also all those who are hearing this narration between Arjun and Krishna, they are drinking the nectarian milk of the Bhagavad Gita. Also, Bhagavad Gita comes from the mouth of the Supreme Person, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. जिस तरह से we all know that Ganga emanates from the toe of Lord Vishnu, उसी तरह से Gita emanates from the mouth of the Lord. So it is even more important than the Ganges water that's emanating from the toe, although there is no difference between the Lord's mouth or toe. Yeah. So how should we read? How should we understand the Bhagavad Gita? The spirit, the vital principle of the Bhagavad Gita is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita itself. The example given is that how does one take medicine? Medicine is taken according to the prescription, correct? Given by the doctor. So you take it according to the prescription of the physician. You don't take it whimsically or according to your own. I think somebody's audio is on.
Yeah, Sheetal's audio is on.
So maybe आप as a admin आप कर सकते हैं. Can you take care of that, please, Reena?
Sorry.
No, no problem. Um, uh, yeah, that's why the admin is here. So, medicine is to be taken according to
वनीता आपका भी म्यूट हो गया है।
Anushka,
oh,
हाँ,
it's okay now? Yeah. Okay. So, as I was saying, you all heard that part, no? That medicine has to be taken according to the physician, not by our own self. Medicine does not have to be taken whimsically by our own intelligence. Similarly, the Bhagavad Gita is to be taken as directed by its speaker. And who's the speaker of the Bhagavad Gita? Lord Shri Krishna, who himself is establishing himself as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Also confirmed by great acharyas like Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Nimbarka Swami, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Okay. So this knowledge was revealed in succession. सबसे पहले भगवान श्री कृष्ण ने he spoke the Bhagavad Gita to Vivaswan, the sun god, and Vivaswan then spoke it to his son Manu, and Manu then spoke it to Ikshvaku, his son Ikshvaku. So this is called disciplic succession or parampara, through which it is received. But over the period of time, because this is a civilization of millions and millions of kalpas and yugas, so gradually, with the passage of time, the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita was lost. So subsequently, 5,000 years back, Krishna reappeared and descended to this world to speak it again. So 5,000 years back, Bhagavad Gita was re-spoken. It's not that it was spoken for the first time. It was re-spoken, and who was it spoken to? Arjun. He was the first disciple of Krishna. This is in Dwapar. So what are the qualities that are required to understand the Bhagavad Gita? There are many, but let's just look at the two most important. One has to be a devotee of Krishna, and one has to be a friend of Krishna. So if you are inimical and you do not believe in the person who is speaking it, there is no point in reading the Bhagavad Gita. These two qualities are important if you really want to drink that nectar from the cow of the Gita Upanishad. You have to be a devotee of Krishna and you have to be a friend of Krishna. Then the nectar will benefit your body. Otherwise, you will be able to drink it, but it's just going to bounce off you without giving you any nourishment. It's not going to nourish your soul. Okay. What is the purpose of the speaking the Bhagavad Gita once again, repeating it so many times, because every person is in difficulty. Every person right now is suffering with the four main kinds of sufferings: Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi. And everybody is looking for a solution. In the Brahma Sutra, this inquiry on looking for a solution is called Brahma Jigyasa, Athato Brahma Jigyasa, which all of you have. That is why you are here, trying to understand why for these such sincere students who are seeking the knowledge of life, the purpose of life, the Bhagavad Gita was spoken. There are sincere seekers even today. But what are the reasons for Lord Krishna's appearance? Everybody knows why did he come? To re-establish the real purpose of life, which was forgotten. You can see very easily right now in Kali Yuga. I hope, Veenu, you are recording.
Yeah, recording. I'm recording.
Yeah, all right. So, out of many human beings, some awaken and of them one who actually enters the spirit of understanding his position. For those people the Bhagavad Gita is spoken. In short, जो ढूंढ रहा है उसमें उसको इसमें वो सभी questions के answers मिल जाएंगे जो उसे सता रहे हैं. But it will be revealed to those जो इसे ढूंढ रहे हैं. जो नहीं ढूंढ रहे, the book, it's going to be like any other book to them. And what is Arjun's position here? He is a close associate of Krishna, and he is above ignorance. So there are 5 subject matters जो हम इस भगवद गीता में करेंगे. The 5 subject matters of the Bhagavad Gita are ईश्वर, जीव, प्रकृति, कर्म and काल. इनको डिटेल में हम डिस्कस करेंगे. बहुत डिटेल में लिया जाएगा in the Bhagavad Gita and the 700 verses of the Bhagavad Gita. Jeev, which is the living entity, that is all of us. All of us are the controlled and conditioned. Prakriti, material nature. Sattvagun, Rajagun and Tamogun, all 3. Kal, time, eternal time, and Karam. It's interesting to look at the picture of Karam that has been put. Whatever you do is ultimately going to come back to you. You can see that each person is trying to keep his house clean and dumping his garbage into his neighbor's house. But guess what? His neighbor is doing the same. And ultimately, that pot of garbage returns back to his house. Somebody else does it, but it does come back to him. So this is the law of Karam. Whatever you do, eventually it's going to find its way back to you, sooner or later. So ये 5 basic subject matters हैं Bhagavad Gita के, which will be covered in detail, in depth. Let's take a look at इतना हम सुनते हैं on Vedas and Vedic knowledge. What exactly are the Vedas? What all is contained in the Vedas? So knowledge of the Vedas came through 2 sources, Shruti and Smriti. Shruti means heard. You heard it from disciplic succession. The Guru spoke to his disciple, who spoke to his disciple, who spoke to his disciple. In olden days, everybody was a Shrutidhar. What is a Shrutidhar? Shrutidhar means he who never forgets anything. There were no books in olden days. In Gurukuls, there were no books. Imagine children went to the Gurukul without a school bag, without books. Why? Because their memory was so sharp and so strong. Whatever they heard once in class, they remembered it for the rest of their life. So whatever shlokas and theory they read from their grade 1 to grade 12, everything was written here in their RAM. This is how Vedic knowledge was transmitted. From Satyug to Treta Yug to Dwapar Yug. So that is the way of transmission. Shruti. Shruti के अंदर क्या आता है? All the 4 Vedas, Rigved, Yajurved, Samved, Atharvaved. Upveda भी आते हैं इसमें, like Ayurved, Dhanurved, and we also get all the Vedangas, like Vyakaran. And under the Vedas also come the 108 Upanishads. ये सब आ गए श्रुति में. What is unique about the Shruti? That every word is unchanged eternally. Not a single full stop or comma can ever change in a Shruti. It is transmitted verbatim as it is. And what is the other way of transmitting Vedic knowledge? Smriti. And what is Smriti? Smriti is what the sages spoke through their memory. For example, whatever they heard and saw, that they compiled into books. The most important and the most popular being Puran and Itihas. What are Purans and Itihasas? Histories. The history of our civilization, not just of a few 100 years old or a few 1,000 years old, of millions and millions of years old, of yugas. And we know what is the duration of a yuga. It is a mind-boggling figure. Now, smritis were composed by sages, but the wordings of a smriti can change from age to age, depending on what the sage the language that the sage is using. That can change, but Shruti will never change. So what comes under Smriti? Puran and Itihas. And Mahabharata is a part of a Puran. Okay. There are 3-4 very unique features. There is it is infallible. What is the meaning of infallible? That which never fails. They never need to correct their statements by the changing political scenario or social scenario. Whatever changes in the world, the words of the Vedas don't change. So it is infallible. And thirdly, it is beyond mistakes. Why is it beyond mistakes? Because it is apaurusheya, which means apurush, jo purush nahi hai. And what does that mean? Jo material purush nahi hai, jo transcendental hai. It has been spoken by the Lord himself. So it has been spoken by a person who is not of this material world. And therefore, that person is above the 4 defects of the material world. Every person born in this world, which includes all of us, has these 4 defects. So it's buy one, get 4 free. जैसे ही आपने यहाँ जन्म लिया, you get these free the moment you are born. What do you get free? Imperfect senses. We've done this in detail, all of us in the DYPH series. What is imperfect senses? Limitation है हमारे आँखों की, कानों की, हम सारी frequencies नहीं सुन सकते, हम अंधेरे में नहीं देख सकते, दूर तक नहीं देख सकते. So हमारी senses की limitation है. So if we are relying only on our senses to find out the truth about life, there is a big limitation. Second is we commit mistakes. There is a very famous saying, to err is human. So human being means you will be prone to making mistakes. The third defect is they are always an illusion. Refraction देखा है हम सब ने, पानी के ग्लास में अगर आप पेन डाल दो तो वो टेढ़ा दिखाई देता है ना? होता नहीं है लेकिन दिखाई देता है. It's an illusion. There are optical illusions. There are various kinds of illusions. Mirage, रेगिस्तान में पानी का आभास, पानी दिखता है लेकिन वहाँ पानी होता नहीं है. So we are always in illusion. We see things that actually are not there. And the fourth is cheating tendency. These 4 are in the DNA of human beings. You cannot separate them from a human being. Hence, the Vedas are not coming from any human being, from any Purush. It is apaurushaya, which means it is above these 4 defects. These 4 defects are not there in the Vedas. And the essence of all Vedic scriptures is the Bhagavad Gita, which should be understood without interpretation. Vedic knowledge is not a matter of research. इसे research करने की जरूरत नहीं है, cross check करने की जरूरत नहीं है, prove करने की जरूरत नहीं है, because it is coming down in a disciplic succession, in a parampara. So what is the disciplic succession? Years back, millions of years back, Lord Krishna imparted this knowledge to Lord Brahma. Srimad Bhagavatam के पहले वर्ष में तेने ब्रह्म हृदय आदि कवये. ब्रह्मा के हृदय में this knowledge was imparted. ब्रह्मा को क्या कहते हैं? पितामह. And who imparted this knowledge into the heart of Pitamaha? Prapitamaha. Who is Prapitamaha? Lord Krishna. So the Prapitamaha imparted this knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita into the heart of Pitamaha, Lord Brahma, and then from Lord Brahma it went to his son Narad and went to his son, and that's how the disciplic succession started. And years later in Dwapar Yuga, Prapitamaha spoke it directly to Arjun also. So this is the way Bhagavad Gita is coming down to us. This is the parampara through which the Bhagavad Gita in this age, in Kali Yuga, has been coming down, starting from Krishna, number 1. Number 2 आप देख सकते हो, Krishna spoke it to Brahma, Brahma spoke it to Narad, Narad's son Vyasadev, Vyasadev's disciple Madhvacharya, whose disciple Padmanabh, and then come to, it goes on and on and on, come to number 20, Madhavendra Puri, Ishwar Puri. These are acharyas in the 15th century. Kaha Brahma, and now look, it has been coming down till recently. 15th century is what, like 500 years back. In Mayapur, West Bengal, Navdvip Mandal is where Madhavendra Puri appeared and Ishwar Puri appeared. So this knowledge was transferred to them. They in turn gave it to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and then to Rup Goswami, Raghunath Goswami, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, Baldev Vidyabhushan, and coming down to number 32, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who is the founder Acharya of International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So you can see the lineage from where this information is coming and how authoritative, authentic it is, because it is coming directly from Krishna. So we all know that the Bhagavad Gita has 18 chapters and 700 verses. बहुत ही छोटा है compared to the 4 lakh verses of the Vedas, out of which Dhritarashtra speaks only one, which is the first verse, to hum aaj karenge, and the majority of the chunk is spoken by Lord Shri Krishna. 574 verses are spoken by Krishna, and the next highest is by Arjun, 84. So Arjun is inquiring, constantly asking questions. Krishna, why this? Krishna, why that? Krishna, how do I do this? Krishna, how do I do that? And Krishna is supplying him the answers, just like the Gwala who is giving milk to the calf. Okay. Now, the Bhagavad Gita as it is that we are going to start reading today, how was this book written? There is some unique features in this book that you won't find in the other versions of the Bhagavad Gita. First is the verse, of course. The original verse is written in Sanskrit, and then that same Sanskrit is written in English as well for those who can't read Hindi. And then there is a transliteration. This part is unique to this book, Bhagavad Gita as it is. Each word, Sanskrit word, is also translated. So there's a word-to-word meaning. And then there is a translation in English, and then there is a purport. Purport means not the author's own ideas or the author's own interpretation. The purports or the explanations of each verse are based on Srila Baldev Vidyabhushan's commentaries, who has so nicely presented the Govind Bhasya commentary on the Vedanta philosophy. And not only this, Srila Prabhupada's commentary is based on, of course, Baldev Vidyabhushan, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Sripad Ramanujacharya, and Srila Sridhar Swami. So you can imagine how much research and study has gone into reading the scriptures written by these 4 very stalwart acharyas, and then all of it has been condensed in a very simple to understand English language for us. So it is indeed a very, very precious understanding of the Bhagavad Gita, which is unique. The essence of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita is that you can perfect your life and solve all the problems of your life if you just adopt the principles that are given in the Bhagavad Gita. This one book is sufficient. There is no need to read any other form of Vedas. This is sufficient in itself. So it has made the lives of us in Kali Yuga even more easy. Just 700 verses. What is the greatest offense in reading the Bhagavad Gita, and what is the remedy? Interpreting the Bhagavad Gita without any reference to the will of Krishna is the greatest offense, which you will find in most commentaries of the Bhagavad Gita available in the market today. Because it's a very famous book, people love to pick the Bhagavad Gita up, but then translate it according to their own interpretations. And they completely disregard the speaker of the Bhagavad Gita himself, saying that Krishna is not a person, he's just a mythological figure, just a fictional character who is trying to explain a concept to you. This is what most Bhagavad Gitas in the market say. So that's a very big offense to the speaker of the Bhagavad Gita itself, that you are going against the will of Krishna and then trying to present his words to the public. And to save yourself from this offense, what do you have to do? You understand it like Arjun, how Arjun understood it from Krishna, like a devotee and like his friend. So this translation that we are going to read is going to bring us closer to Krishna rather than taking us away from Krishna. All the previous versions of the Bhagavad Gita have not produced any devotee of Krishna. They've just produced philosophers, but nobody has developed love for Krishna or a friendship for Krishna or an interest in Krishna. Okay. A lot has been said about Sanatan Dharam. Let's see what the real meaning of Sanatan Dharam is. According to Shripad Ramanujacharya, Sanatan ka literal meaning hai eternal. That which has no beginning and no end. It was always there, it is there right now, and it will remain in future, even after the dissolution of this world. That is the meaning of eternal. Just like you and me. Just like a soul is eternal, similarly, this Sanatan Dharam is eternal. And this word dharam has really been mutilated and misused and misinterpreted time and time again. Because in our mind, dharam refers to, oh, Hindu religion. Hum Hindu hai, isliye hamara dharam Hindu hai. No, that is not the Sanskrit meaning of dharam. Dharam does not refer to any sectarian process or religion. What is the, to give you an example, how do you understand dharam? चीनी शुगर का धर्म है मिठास. इसका मतलब मिठास चीनी के डीएनए में है, उसको आप सेपरेट नहीं कर सकते. उसी तरह सॉल्टीनेस इज द धर्म ऑफ सॉल्ट. वो उसके अंदर रचा बसा हुआ है, उसको आप सेपरेट नहीं कर सकते. यस, उसी तरह लव ऑफ गॉड इज आवर धर्म. उसको आप सेपरेट नहीं कर सकते. इट इज आवर सनातन धर्म. वी आर ऑल पार्ट and parcels of God, of Krishna, and we have a unique personal relationship with Krishna. That is our Sanatan Dharam, that we are all his servitors and he is our Lord and Master. Nobody can change this from our blood, from our consciousness, from our DNA, regardless of which religion you are in. Religion is not dharam. Religion is just faith. वो बदल सकता है. आज मैं हिंदू हूँ, कल मुझे हिंदू की कुछ चीजें पसंद नहीं आई तो मैंने धर्म बदल लिया, मैं मुसलमान बन गई. परसों मैं क्रिश्चियन बन गई. धर्म बदला जा रिलीजन बदला जा सकता है, फेथ बदला जा सकता है, लेकिन धर्म नहीं बदला जा सकता. आप चीनी से उसकी मिठास अगर बदल देंगे तो you cannot call it sugar anymore. Similarly, you cannot be called a human being if you will be separated from this idea that you are not a servitor of God, or you are not God's child. That is the meaning of dharam. This is the difference between religion and Sanatan Dharam. Religion can have a beginning or an end, but Sanatan Dharam is eternal. And this is what the Krishna consciousness movement is all about. We are trying to fulfill this purpose of the Bhagavad Gita as it is. It's very essential to the human society right now. It's an epidemic, a kind of an epidemic where people are spiraling downwards into the most hellish kind of life, all because of ignorance. They don't know what is the real purpose of life, why we are here, what we are supposed to be doing, and what we are not supposed to be doing. So there is a great need for this knowledge, this information. This is the central point of Krishna consciousness. Okay, so we have finished the introduction of the Bhagavad Gita, and now we start. Wow, I did it in 35 minutes. I was thinking I'll take an hour on this. All right. Mangalacharan is invoking auspiciousness. We pay our obeisances to the whole Guru Parampara जो हमने अभी देखी इसमें, we will invoke their mercy and their blessings so that this journey on which we have started is fruitful and we are able to progress on it the way it should be done in the right way. So you may open the prayers from, if you have the book. If you don't have, that's all right. And of course you will stay muted, but you can read it along with me. It's on page, I think, 29. Okay. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupaha Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakha Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesh Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. All right. So according to Srila Prabhupada, who is the author, the translator of Bhagavad Gita as it is, one must study the Bhagavad Gita inside out, which means thoroughly. And this will help them govern our external activities. Also, one important note, one must understand the flow of the philosophy and not in isolation. This is a big mistake that we do many times. जो हम अपनी practical इस life में भी देखते हैं, when people are quoted out of context. And then the meaning is misinterpreted and you will not get. Like, for example, Hitler, he also read the Bhagavad Gita. And in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, when he read that the soul is eternal, and the soul never dies, only the body dies. So there is no harm in if the body dies, because the soul doesn't really die. So he just used that concept out of context, not in a cohesive unit, not in a flow of philosophy. And he started killing people, saying that I'm cleansing this world because I'm not killing them. Their soul is eternal. So I'm not killing the soul. I'm just killing their bodies. He justified his barbaric actions. So it's very important that you understand the flow of the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita, not in isolation. Okay? Yeah. 700 verses here. There are 3 main sections of the Bhagavad Gita. The first 6 chapters talk about Karam Yoga. The middle 7 to 12 chapters talk about Bhakti Yoga. And the last 13 to 18 chapters talk about Gyan Yoga. Now, Acharyas are giving us the reason why the Bhagavad Gita has been spoken like this and why Bhakti Yoga has been put in the middle, in between Karma Yoga and Gyan Yoga. So the Acharyas in the disciplic succession that we saw explain that Bhakti is actually very secretive. It is a rahasya. It is not free for all. It is only for the seekers and for the genuine seekers. And it is the essence of all the Vedas, not just the Bhagavad Gita. So anything that is secret is always kept in the middle, like a sandwich, to protect it. So there is Karma Yoga on top and there is Gyan Yoga below, and in between is Bhakti Yoga. Karam and Gyan Yoga are both dead and lifeless without Bhakti in the middle. It's Bhakti that is keeping them both together, Karma Yoga and Gyan Yoga. It's the glue between them. It is the main filling between them. Without Bhakti Yoga, Karma and Jnana Yoga are meaningless, which is the main reason of why our society is failing and why our efforts are failing. Because there is a lot of focus on Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga. Again, people have understood the Bhagavad Gita out of context and in isolation. Some people say, I just want to follow Karma Yoga. Some say, I just want to follow Jnana Yoga. Well, that's not an option. That's not how the speaker of the Bhagavad Gita intended it to be. Without Bhakti Yoga, Karma and Jnana Yoga cannot be practiced. So generally, we do not disclose anything which is a secret until you become very intimate with that person. So out of respect, Bhakti is placed in the middle. That is why the most important, the juice of the Bhagavad Gita, the essence, the nectar of the Bhagavad Gita will come in the middle, 7th chapter onwards. Okay? So we've already done this, that Lord Krishna speaks 82% of the verses, or 574. Arjun speaks 84. Sanjay speaks 41 verses and Dhritarashtra just 1. But that one verse itself is loaded. Okay, so with that we come to the first verse. I'll read. आप लोग सुनिए और साथ साथ पढ़ने की कोशिश कीजिए, कीपिंग योरसेल्फ म्यूट. धर्म क्षेत्रे कुरुक्षेत्रे संवेतायुयुत्सवः मामकाः पांडवाश्चैव किम अकुर्वत संजय. Is there anyone who wants to try reading the verse?
Vanita, just a minute, I want to ask something. Vanita, this is Preeti, हाँ? ये कहाँ से शुरू है ये जो आप पढ़ रहे हैं?
Bhagavad Gita chapter 1 verse 1.
धर्मक्षेत्र, हाँ जी, ठीक है. Observing the enemies of the battlefield of Kurukshetra, है ना?
Yeah. Who would like? Anybody would want to try? You can raise your hand and let me know. Otherwise, we will go ahead.
मैं पढ़ूं?
हाँ, please, Monica. Yes, go ahead. Yes, Monica.
धर्म क्षेत्रे कुरुक्षेत्रे संवेतायुयुत्वा मामकाः पांडवश्वे किम कुर्वत संजय.
Yes, very nice. So, do you want to read the translation also, Monica?
Yes, in English.
Yes, in English. Whatever. If you have the Hindi translation, please read the Hindi.
Dhritarashtra said, O Sanjay, after my sons and sons of Pandu assembled in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, desiring to fight, what did they do?
Yes. Now, this verse is a very important verse, and I would encourage all of you to memorize it. You will see purport bhi iska काफी लंबा है, because seemingly it looks like a very simple verse, but all these acharyas are going to explain to us the depth underlying depth in this. So Dhritarashtra is asking Sanjay a very basic question, that, "O Sanjay, after my sons and the sons of Pandu." So the first point is here itself. Let's go into the history of. Okay, I forgot to put those slides. We all know the history. I'll just briefly recapitulate it for you. भारतवर्ष को नाम मिला from the king Bharat. Raja Bharat the, he was the ruler of the entire world, not just India, and that's how our continent came to be called Bharatvarsh. In his dynasty, he was from the Kuru dynasty. In his dynasty appeared a king named Shantanu. He was a very, very powerful king and also a very virtuous king. You know, उनका नाम शांतनु केवल ऐसे ही नहीं पड़ा था. He was indeed very, very शांत. मतलब in the midst of the greatest diversities, he was able to keep calm, control himself and keep calm and take decisions. So that's how his name was Shantanu. And he had a son Bhishma through Ganga Mata, and then his wife Kunti and sorry.
Satyavati and Ganga. He had two wives, Satyavati and Ganga.
Yes. Yeah. So
And
in this
Mata,
dynasty,
sorry, I am just trying to understand. Did you say Bharat ka son was Shantanu? King
no,
Bharat
in the same dynasty.
in his
I said
dynasty.
in the same dynasty. Yeah. So yeah. So I'm talking about the Kuru dynasty. In the Kuru dynasty, appeared Dhritarashtra and
मैं बता सकती हूँ. I can explain this part if
yeah,
you don't mind. Okay, so Shantanu was married to two women. One was Ganga, जिनसे गंगा पुत्र भीष्म आए. दूसरी थी Satyavati. So Satyavati had two sons again, Vichitraveer and Chitrangad, something like that. So Dhritarashtra was born. So Chitrangad died very in early age, and Vichitraveer then married three princesses. One was Amba, Ambalika, and Ambika. So Dhritarashtra was born out of one of those, one of those wives. I think it was Amba से
yeah,
हुआ और उन्हीं और अम्बा और अम्बालिका से मतलब 3 sons आए, जिसमें से धृतराष्ट्र थे, पांडु पुत्र थे, और third was Vidur. So there is another story to how Vidur was a maid's son and how Dhritarashtra was blind. If you want, I can explain, but if you want it short, then that's it.
yeah. So I have made a slide where this whole family tree is shown. So you can, if those who are keen to know the family history, can take a look at that later. I think I have not included that also. Yeah. So the point is that Dhritarashtra and Pandu were brothers. Dhritarashtra was the older brother, Pandu was the younger brother. And both of them belonged to the Kuru dynasty. So essentially they belonged to the same family. However, since Dhritarashtra was born blind, he couldn't ascend the throne because the king had to be able-bodied to lead the kingdom. And therefore, Pandu was asked to ascend the throne. This irked Dhritarashtra because his lust for power overpowered him so much that he always resented him not being able to become the king. And when Pandu died an untimely death, when his children were still underage and not fit to succeed him to the throne, they were entrusted into the care of Dhritarashtra. कि ये आपके ताऊजी हैं and you will be under his care till you become old enough to run the kingdom on your own. And once you come of age, then the oldest son Yudhishthir will become the king. Now, when these 5 children, the 5 Pandavas, came to live with Dhritarashtra and his 100 sons, that is, oldest being Duryodhan, there was always a lot of jealousy and enmity between the siblings. And the most prominent being Duryodhan, who inherited his father's feelings. And he felt that he was the rightful king to the throne, and he did not want to share the throne. So even as children, imagine how strong his tendency of envy must be, that as a child he tried to kill Bhim and the Pandavas on various occasions, which is it is unheard of for children to think of killing each other and even going ahead. And we're talking not about Kali Yuga, we're talking about Dwapar Yuga, where the quality of men was much better than what we have now. So, given that scenario, here when Dhritarashtra is saying, "Oh Sanjay, after my sons and the sons of Pandu," already he is differentiating. Instead of saying our sons, he is already differentiating कि मेरे बच्चे और पांडु के बच्चे जब वहां पर मिले. So it shows a very deep-rooted wedge that had already been driven within the family, although they all belonged to the same bloodline. So this is a very important point. Now, the second point here is that when they are assembled in the place of pilgrimage, desiring to fight, what did they do? It's worthwhile to, for example, all of us decide to go and see a movie, and we all meet outside the movie theater. We all have our tickets. And then one of us asks, okay, so what are we going to do now? What is the answer going to be? Or how are you going to regard that question? You know, of course, you have come to watch a movie. So you're going to, we have come here to watch a movie. That question itself is not a very intelligent question, unless there is some deep underlying emotion. So you are all gathered on the battlefield. You know that the Kauravas are standing on one side, Pandavas दूसरी तरफ खड़े हैं, युद्ध शुरू होने वाला है और लड़ाई की इच्छा और मनसा से ही सब यहाँ पर इकट्ठे हुए हैं और धृतराष्ट्र पूछ रहे हैं, अच्छा अब क्या हुआ? What did they do? What did the Pandavas and the Kauravas do? So this is actually showing his deep-rooted fear. Dhritarashtra was extremely fearful for his sons, which also means why was he fearful? Because he knew that they were on the wrong side. He knew he was on the wrong side, but his lust for power was so strong that he nevertheless continued propagating the same symptoms throughout his life. Because the word Dharam Kshetra is also very significant here. कुरुक्षेत्र को धर्म क्षेत्र बताया गया है, धर्म क्षेत्र के नाम से इसे संबोधित किया गया है. Why? Because Kurukshetra, before the battle of Mahabharata, was always renowned as a very, very pious place. It was such a pious place that the Devi Devtas regularly descended from the heavenly planets to come to Kurukshetra to perform religious ceremonies. Because यहाँ पर जो भी धर्म का काम किया जाता था, that used to yield benefits and results instantly and very successfully. So it was renowned as a place of religion. It was renowned as a place of dharam, not religion. It's a very pious place. So it had a lot of power. It had a lot of piety. And why? Whom did it give the power to? To all the pious people. जो धर्म के मार्ग पे थे, वो कुरुक्षेत्र या धर्म क्षेत्र में पहुंचकर naturally powerful हो जाते थे. Because the land of Kurukshetra was giving them that energy, that piety. At the same time, जो धर्म के मार्ग पे नहीं थे या धर्म के against चल रहे थे, वो weak हो जाते थे वहां पे. केवल वहां पहुंचने मात्र से ही they would weaken. So because this happened on Kurukshetra, Dhritarashtra was very fearful because he knew that Pandavas have been righteous from the beginning. They were always on the side of Dharam. And he knew that he and his sons had always used cheating means or devious means to somehow obstruct their ascension to the throne. Secondly, he knew that Lord Shri Krishna was present on the side of the Pandavas, although he had declared that he is not going to fight. But his mere presence itself on their side in their camp was a very big deterrent. तो एक तो धर्म क्षेत्र पे युद्ध हो रहा है, दूसरा धर्मराज जो है कृष्ण, he is on the side of the Pandavas. तीसरा, Pandavas are themselves very righteous. And then Bhishma and Drona, the biggest stalwarts who were on the Kaurav side were actually very saintly themselves. They were always against a war. It was not their natural tendency to fight. Although they were Kshatriyas and they would take up arms when the need be, because it was their duty to defend. But by nature, they did not like fighting. And they had a natural affection for the Pandavas. So all these points put together had made Dhritarashtra very fearful. तो ये actually अपना fear camouflage कर रहे हैं धृतराष्ट्र, ये क्वेश्चन पूछ के अंदर से वो बहुत डरे हुए हैं कि इन 4 important points की वजह से कहीं मेरे बेटे हार तो नहीं जाएंगे, because he really wanted them to win. And you know, आपने सबने यहाँ पे मैंने खेती बाड़ी की पिक्चर इसलिए लगाई हुई है कि चावल का धान जब उगता है तो उसके साथ साथ वीड्स, जंगली घास भी उगती है. जंगली घास को साथ साथ उखाड़ना पड़ता है, तभी जो चावल का धान है वो naturally healthy grow करता है, बड़ा होता है. So irreligious people and irreligious propensities would naturally be wiped out on Kurukshetra. So this was the biggest fear of Dhritarashtra. You know, that what is going to happen now? So he was trying to find out and hoping against hope कि ये युद्ध ना हो. And why was he banking on that? That because the Pandavas are so righteous, ये Pandavas इतने धर्म का अनुशासन करने वाले अनुशील लोग हैं कि शायद ये अपनी भल मनसी में आकर दुर्योधन को सारा राजपाट दे दें और कह दें कि भाई हमें नहीं लड़ना. To this extent he was expecting. Because the Pandavas are so righteous, maybe they will not fight and we will win this battle without even fighting and they'll just give it to us. He was banking very heavily on that. So out of curiosity and out of this hope, he's asking Sanjay that Sanjay, what did they do? What happened? Now, Sanjay is, of course, Dhritarashtra's personal servant, his charioteer, but he's also a disciple of Vyasadeva, who has written the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, compiled kiya unhone. So Vyasadeva gave Sanjay divine powers to see what's happening on the battlefield, because ye to Hastinapur mein baithe hain aur Kurukshetra was miles away from there. Yet by the divine powers given by Vyasadeva to Sanjay, he was able to see, not only see what was happening, but even hear. Now this is advanced science, because even current man, we may have reached the moon. We don't have this technology yet. When we watch a live telecast of a spacecraft landing, you can see it landing, but you can't hear the astronauts on what they are talking to each other and conversing to each other. Or you may even hear big sounds, but you can't hear two people whispering and talking to each other. But such was the technology at that time that Sanjay could hear precisely what Arjun and Krishna are talking about, and they were not talking on a loudspeaker. They were just talking to each other in normal tones. But Sanjay could hear all of that. So that was the technology that was, and how did this come about it? Sorry, I got muted, so I kept on speaking. और आप लोगों ने शायद कुछ सुना ही नहीं. Yeah. So So secretly, Dhritarashtra wanted his sons to win, and he wanted the Pandavas. That is the crux of this verse.
Vanita, your voice is breaking. We couldn't hear. Please repeat.
क्लियर नहीं है आवाज क्लियर नहीं है
So can we read the second verse now?
We are losing you again and again. बीच में आवाज चली जा रही है.
Oh, yeah, it's my computer is showing me that there is can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, could you just repeat what you said last? That he about Dhritarashtra.
Dhritarashtra secretly wanted his sons to win. And he wanted the war not to take place and the result to be declared as they're victorious. He actually did not want a compromise between the Kauravas and the Pandavas. Such was his inimical nature. Imagine, Dhritarashtra never wanted a compromise. He wanted war and he wanted the Pandavas to lose and he wanted his sons to win. So his mind, that devious mind is revealed herein. वो संधि चाहते ही नहीं. Okay, second verse.
संजय उवाच
दृष्ट्वा तु पाण्डवां किं व्यूढं दुर्योधनस्तदा आचार्यं संगम्य राजा वचनम् अब्रवीत्. Prachi, do you want to read the translation in English? Is she there?
Should I read? संस्कृत में मैं पढ़ूं?
Yeah, आप who wants to read?
मैं पढ़ती हूँ प्रीति. हाँ, इसका सिर्फ संस्कृत में तो मैं पढ़ सकती हूँ संस्कृत में.
Yeah, I'm talking about the translation.
हाँ जी. Sanjay said, "O king, after looking over the army arranged in military formation by the sons of Pandu, King Duryodhana went to his teacher and spoke the following words." Hello?
Yes, thank you. You can unmute.
Okay.
So, 3 points can be summarized from verse 1. Dhritarashtra question to Sanjay, what did they do? He had fears and concerns regarding the Dharmkshetra. He already did not consider his brother's children like his own children. So there was a deep enviousness in his nature. Okay, verse 2.
Should I read?
Duryodhana,
Sanskrit में.
verse 2 we have, yeah, you can read if you want to.
संस्कृत में ना?
हाँ, पढ़िए.
हाँ जी. पश्ये एताम पांडु पुत्राणाम. सेकंड वाला. हाँ जी. सेकंड. ये तो पहले तो पढ़ा, इसके बाद यही पढ़ना है ना?
नहीं, आप we are doing verse 2 now. I thought you wanted to do verse 2. Okay.
I'm कंफ्यूजन है. वर्स 2 कौन सा हुआ जो हमने अभी इसका मैंने रीडिंग किया? दृष्ट्वा संजय वर्ष दृष्ट्वा तु पांडव अनिकम, ये वाला.
यही वाला है।
Yes.
अच्छा, दृष्टा तु पांडव अनिकम दुर्योधन नहीं, मूढ़म दुर्योधन दुर्योधन सा
योगनस्तति
आचार्य मूप आचार्यम
उपसंगमय।
उपसंगम राजा वचनम अब्रीवीत। यही पढ़ना था ना
Yeah. अब आप म्यूट कर लीजिए प्लीज.
जी।
Okay. So Sanjay says, Sanjay is a very intelligent person, although he's serving Dhritarashtra. Whatever we discussed in verse 1, Sanjay understood. He understood the heart of Dhritarashtra. He understood why Dhritarashtra is asking this question. But he is such a humble servant of his master that understanding that he is very concerned and he's fearful of the outcome, he's trying to pacify the heart of his master. Such was his devotion as a servant. So just to pacify his heart, he's saying, O king, after looking over the army arranged in military formation by the sons of Pandu, King Duryodhan went to his teacher and spoke the following words. So it's the word king is again very significant here. Please remember, right now the acting king is Dhritarashtra, not Duryodhan. But still, he is addressing Duryodhan as king because he understands the heart of Dhritarashtra. That Dhritarashtra wants to see his son as king, and in his mind already he has made Duryodhan the king. So इसलिए वो दुर्योधन को, जबकि वो प्रिंस हैं अभी, राजा नहीं है, फिर भी उनको राजा दुर्योधन कहकर संबोधित किया है संजय ने. And he says that after looking over the army arrayed in military formation, King Duryodhan goes to his teacher and he's speaking the following. So, the second significant part of this verse is that although Duryodhan is king, Raja hote hue bhi, he has to take a subordinate position and he has to walk himself over to the commander-in-chief for advice. So when a lot is at stake, just see, this shows the political mind of Duryodhan. Duryodhan was, he was a diplomat. He knew the art of diplomacy on how to flatter someone and how to extract things out of someone. He was very, very politically minded and politically motivated. So whatever he did, there was a reason behind it, and a politically motivated, a power motivated reason behind what he said and did. So he, although he was the king, but on purpose he went and he approached the commander-in-chief for advice. Although he was there to give directions to the commander-in-chief who would receive instructions from him. But he's deliberately taking a very humble position to go and find out their level of confidence on how they are feeling about this war. Because the war is actually won here first before you physically win it on the battlefield. आपका आत्मविश्वास पहले आपको युद्ध जिताता है, बाद में आप लड़कर उसको जीतते हैं. But first you have to be confident here. So he wanted to understand the state of mind of his commander-in-chief, how they are feeling, or are they still feeling affectionate towards the Pandavas? Because commander-in-chief कौन है? द्रोणाचार्य, भीष्म, ये grandfatherly figures हैं पांडवों के भी, and they have always been very affectionate. They have raised them like their children. So Duryodhan, being the was, he deliberately went over to them to find out on whether do they still have a soft corner for them, or they are gathered here today to fight. So there is one more feeling that is being betrayed here by Duryodhan, the same as his father, fear. This verse also shows कि दुर्योधन के मन में बहुत डर था. Why? Because the military formation that he saw of the Pandavas was a mind-boggling military formation. It was the military formation, the way the army had been arranged on the battlefield of Kurukshetra was like that of a winner. Although the number of Akshahinis that the Pandavas had was much less to what the Kauravas had. पांडवों के पास केवल 7 अक्षौहिणीज थी और इनके पास 14. Still, उन्होंने इतनी brilliant fashion में अपने आर्मी को arrange किया that Duryodhan instantly had fear in his heart. He was shocked that they had come with such preparedness. So that's why he wanted to double check and cross check on how battle ready his army is or his commander-in-chief is. So with this intention in mind,
Sorry to interrupt. Just I saw the message. Anu is not able to join. Veenu, could you just help her? I'll just call her. मैं उसको कॉल करती हूँ. उसका मैसेज आया हुआ 4:40 का कि आई एम नॉट एबल टू जॉइन द मीटिंग.
ओके, उसको बोलो दोबारा ट्राई करेगी.
हाँ ठीक है.
yeah. So Duryodhan's diplomatic veneer, although he tried to put up a brave front, but it could not disguise the fear he felt when he saw the military arrangement of the Pandavas. So father and son, दोनों के मन में डर है. Why? Because back of the mind they know that they have not been on the side of Dharma all their life. Righteousness was not on their side, it was on the side of the Pandavas. That itself was giving the Pandavas so much of confidence. So this is the crux of verse 2. The 3 points that I've also showed on my slide. Duryodhan approaches Dronacharya after assessing the military formation of the Pandavas. And Duryodhan
Vanita, your voice is cutting, breaking, so clear नहीं हो रहा है.
Okay.
हाँ, बीच बीच में कट रही है, मतलब
अब आ रही है? How about now?
अभी ठीक है. हाँ जी, अभी ठीक है. हाँ.
Okay. I don't know what is the problem.
कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं, कोई नहीं, आप बोलिए.
All right. So I have to leave. Comes 3. Who
मैं
would
read
want to?
करूँ? I want to read again. मैं आए? मैं पढ़ूँ?
We'll give a chance to someone else also.
Okay. Okay, okay, no problem. ठीक है.
Just Parve. Who would like to read?
Okay,
yes.
Vanita.
Anji.
This is Vaiji. Shall I try?
These two, Vaiji. Yes,
Okay.
verse number 3.
Okay. Pashyaitam Panduputranam Acharya Mahadin Jamum Vyudam Drubada Putrena Tava Shishyena Dhimata.
That's wonderful. Can you do it one more time, please?
Sure. Pashyaitam Panduputranam Acharya Mahadin Jamum Vyudam Drubada Putrena Tava Shishyena Dhimata.
Okay. Translation. Do you have the Bhagavad Gita as it is?
I have, I think so, yeah. This is like a Prabhupada's book only. I think I got it from you.
Okay. Then please read the translation.
Okay. Oh, my teacher, behold the great army of the sons of Pandu, so expertly arranged by your intelligent disciple, the son of Drupada.
Yeah. So each word, every word is loaded with meaning here. ये seemingly बहुत simple verse लग रहे हैं, but this is the sheer intelligence of these great stalwart acharyas that Prabhupada has read and then summarized in these purports. There is a word used here very craftily, very cunningly. Duryodhan uses the word Drupad, the son of Drupad. Now the son of Drupad is Drishtadryumna. So जानबूझकर दुर्योधन ने दृष्टद्युम्न नहीं बोला, लेकिन सन ऑफ द्रुपद बोला. इसके पीछे भी उसकी एक कनिंगनेस थी, उसकी एक चाल थी. Why he spoke this? Oh my teacher. So this means that he walked over to Dronacharya. अब द्रोणाचार्य के पास गए and he said, oh my teacher, behold, behold मतलब see the great army of the sons of Pandu. Again he's saying sons of Pandu, he's not saying his brothers. Like he considered them a different family altogether, not belonging to their dynasty at all. So expertly arranged by your intelligent disciple, the son of Drupad. So दुर्योधन की कौरवों के जो कमांडर इन चीफ थे वो ये चार थे, द्रोणाचार्य एंड भीष्मदेव, शाल्य एंड कृतवर्मा, ये चार थे. लेकिन पांडवों के जो कमांडर इन चीफ था, that was just one, Drishtadhyumna. And who was Drishtadhyumna? He was the son of Drupad. Or there is a history behind this, why he went to Dronacharya. द्रोणाचार्य बचपन में पढ़े थे इकट्ठे, and they were very good friends. And one they got lost in the forest when they had gone to collect firewood for their guru, their spiritual master. At that time, Dronacharya was able to save Drishtadhyumna, and they were able to come back safe to the Gurukul. So Drishtadhyumna, when they had finished their studies and he was going back to his kingdom, Dronacharya was the son of a very humble Brahmin, but Drupad was the son of a king at that time. He was from the royal dynasty. लेकिन द्रोणाचार्य एक हम्बल ब्राह्मण के बेटे थे, लेकिन दोनों में बहुत अच्छी दोस्ती थी. तो द्रुपद ने जाते हुए कहा द्रोणाचार्य को that anytime you need any help, please come to me. I will help you because I am the son of a king, and I can help you in any way that you want once you start living your life as a simple Brahmin. So it so happened that Dronacharya got married, and he had a fairly difficult time in his married life. A certain patch of his life was very difficult, where they were going through acute poverty. बहुत ही गरीबी से गुजर रहे थे. तो तब द्रोणाचार्य को ये बात याद आई द्रुपद की. So he set off for Drupad's kingdom. And thinking that मेरा दोस्त है और उसने मुझे extend भी किया था hand of friendship, so I'll go and ask him for help and he will help me. But when he reached there and he greeted Drupad and reminded him of his promise, Drupad had already changed by that time. The power and wealth had already gone to his head. He had become puffed up, and he did not regard Dronacharya as his equal anymore. He regarded him as a beggar, and unfortunately he made the mistake of ill-treating him and insulting him and sending him away from there. Dronacharya felt very insulted and very pained, and being a Kshatriya Brahmin, I mean, he came back and he was training the Pandavas at that time, and he trained them to go and have a fight with Drupad and his army. And he was able to train them so well because he was the best military trainer at that time, that when he went, when he sent them, they were able to win the battle. The Pandavas. Although they were kids, लेकिन वो जीत कर आए और वो द्रुपद को बंदी बनाकर लाए, because द्रोणाचार्य की ये इंस्ट्रक्शंस थी कि उसे मारना नहीं है, जिंदा बंदी बनाकर मेरे पास लेकर आना है. तो उसे बंदी बनाकर लेकर आए, and that's how Dronacharya was able to exact a revenge with him for having humiliated him and insulting him. So when Drupad was tied and brought in front of him, Dronacharya told him that I'm going to forgive you, because this also is a very big insult to a warrior, to a Kshatriya. Kshatriyas want to embrace death on the battlefield when they lose. They don't want to be left free. They don't, mercy is equal to dishonor. So, because Dronacharya wanted him to suffer the same humiliation, so he told him that I'm going to set you free, although you have been defeated at the hands of my disciples. मैंने तो युद्ध करने का मुझे मौका ही नहीं मिला, मेरे disciples ने ही आपको हरा दिया, और जाओ मैं तुम्हें मुक्त करता हूँ. And Drupad harnessed this feeling of revenge in his heart for a long time, and he came back और उन्होंने कड़ी तपस्या की और इस उद्देश्य से तपस्या की कि मुझे देवी देवताओं से ये तपस्या की कि मुझे ऐसा बेटा दो आप जो द्रोणाचार्य को मार सके, who will be the death of Dronacharya. And that's how Drishtadumna was born. And this was common knowledge. सबको पता था that Drishtadumna will be the death of Dronacharya. Dronacharya को भी पता था. And so Duryodhan, being the cunning diplomat that he is, he went to Dronacharya to remind him of this whole story. That is why instead of saying Drishtadumna, he's saying that, look, your intelligent disciple, the son of Drupad ने देखो कैसे इतनी expertly ये army की है, form यहाँ पर form की है. He's actually taunting him. Although it's not his position, Dronacharya is his worshipable guru who has trained him in the, he's his teacher. But he's indirectly trying to tell him that because of your old enmity and as a result of which Drishtadumna was born, and not just this, one more point. जब Drishtadumna पैदा हुआ और जब when he came of age to be trained in the military art, what did Drupad do? He sent his son Drishtadumna to Dronacharya to be trained. Just see the caliber of people in that at that time in Dwapar Yuga. And Dronacharya ये जानते हुए भी कि Drishtadumna उनकी मौत का कारण बनेगा, उन्होंने फिर भी अपना धर्म निभाया that he has come to me as a student and I am his teacher, so I will teach him the art of military formation, all the secret art of military formation. और उन्होंने उसे train किया. This is the heart of a Brahmin. This is the quality of a Brahmin. So ये सारा background पता था, सबको पता था, और इसकी वजह से दुर्योधन जाकर उन्हें टॉन्ट करते हैं कि ये देखो आपकी वजह से आपका ही सिखाया हुआ नीतियां जो आपकी ही सिखाई हुई हैं, that is being used against us now in this war. Though they are so less in number, see how nicely they have arranged the battlefield, and it's so difficult to penetrate this battlefield. This was the background on why Duryodhan went and told him, "Oh my teacher, behold the great army of the sons of Pandu, so expertly arranged by your intelligent disciple, the son of Drupad." Okay. So the points that we are covering here is that, of course, Duryodhan is a very expert politician and diplomat. Drishtadumna is referred to as the son of Drupad, just to remind him that Drupad is your sworn enemy. And he's trying to provoke Drona by this. And why is he trying to provoke? That once he is provoked, once a warrior is provoked, then he always fights to win the battle. And this was the purpose of Duryodhan. He wanted to provoke both Drona and Bhishma, so that even if they have any affection for the Pandavas underlying in their heart, they still fight valiantly to win this battle. They are so overcome by their own enmity with the opposite people of the party. Drishtadumna is always a disciple of Dronacharya, so being guru is always an expert. Similarly, Pandavas are also trained by Dronacharya. So he should not be lenient in fighting. This is the message Dronacharya's Duryodhan is trying to give Dronacharya. That Pandavas को भी आप ही ने train किया है, और उनका जो कमांडर इन चीफ है धृष्टद्युम्न, उसको भी आप ही ने ट्रेन किया है। लेकिन याद रखना कि ये जीतने ना पाए। यू आर स्टिल देयर गुरु and they are your disciples, so you still have an upper edge over them and you are on the opposite side as them. So do not have any affectionate feelings for them and you have to fight. So he's trying to challenge them, and Kshatriyas don't like being challenged, you know, their ego being challenged. So this is what Duryodhana is trying to tackle: instigate and provoke. Yeah. So we go to the 4th verse now. Yeah, you can raise your hands. Anybody who wants to.
Can I read? Hema.
Yes, Hema, please do.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
अत्र श्रूरा महेश्वासा भीमार्जुन समायुधि युयुधानो विराटश्च द्रुपदश्च महारथः.
Yeah, you can read the translation also.
Here in this,
take care.
Here, yeah. Thank you. Here in this army are many heroic women equal in fighting. To Bhima and Arjuna, great fighters like Yuyodhana, Virata, and Yuyudhana, Virat, and Drupad.
Yeah. Great fighters like Yuyudhan, Virat, and Drupad. So this slide is interesting just to see. It's just information, nothing to memorize. ये कुछ statistics हैं जो मुझे मिले हैं कि पांडव्स और कौरव्स के कितने सोल्जर्स थे, किस तरह की उनकी आर्मी थी. So एक अक्षौहिणी में कितने लोग होते हैं? Just see. One अक्षौहिणी means 21,870 chariots and 21,870 elephants, 65,610 horses, और 1,09,350 foot soldiers. All these together make one अक्षौहिणी. तो पांडवों के पास 7 ऐसी अक्षौहिणीज थी और कौरवों के पास 11 ऐसी अक्षौहिणीज थी. And the commander in chief of the Pandavas was just one, Drishtadyumna. लेकिन कौरवों के पांडव of chief देखो, भीष्म, द्रोण, कर्ण, शाल्य and दुर्योधन. Similarly, महारथी, महारथी मतलब one man is equal to 60,000 warriors. उसको महारथी बोलेंगे. So पांडवों में कौन था महारथी? केवल अर्जुन. One Arjun was equivalent to the strength or power of 60,000 warriors. लेकिन कौरवों के पास 4 थे, भीष्म, द्रोण, कर्म and अश्वत्थामा. Each of them was equal to 60,000, the strength of 60,000 warriors. So 60,000 times 4, you can imagine. Similarly, अतिरथीज मतलब 10,000 योद्धाओं के बराबर. कौन था? युधिष्ठिर, भीम, धृष्टद्युम्न, घटोत्कच, सत्यकी and युयुत्सु. Each one of them was equal to 10,000 warriors. और कौरवों के पास हमेशा more, शाल्य, सोमदत्त, भूरिश्रव, भागदत्त, जयद्रथ and कृतवर्मा. So it's just to give you a glimpse on how big this war was. Actually, it was a world war. There was no king on the planet Earth that did not get involved in the fight. In fact, it was declared that every king on the planet has to take a side, either Kaurav or Pandav. You cannot stay neutral. So it was a world war. And naturally, all the irreligious kings were attracted towards the Kauravas side. And all the righteous kings took the side of the Pandavas. So, yes, verse 4.
Can I read 5?
Yes. Even though Drishtadyumna was not a very important obstacle in the face of Dronacharya's very great power in the military art, there were many others who were causes of fear. They are mentioned by Duryodhana as great stumbling blocks on the path of victory, because each and every one of them was as formidable as Bhim and Arjun. He knew the strength of Bhim and Arjun, and therefore he was comparing all the others with them. So again, this shows the fear in the heart of Duryodhana. He is describing each and every warrior of the opposing army. So he's saying, and he's comparing all of them to Bhim and Arjun. Why? क्योंकि भीम और अर्जुन को वो क्लोजली जानता था, बचपन से उनके साथ पला बड़ा था. He knew exactly about their strength and the kind of talent and power they had. So he is gauging. He's trying to gauge what are the statistics in his favor. Victory के कितने chances हैं उसके, because, but still he was convinced that he is going to win. However, all of the Pandavas who are fighting, there is one big difference. They are fighting not for any material gain, because this is a dharam yudh. So they are fighting for rights, not for any material gain. It was not for power, it was not for the throne, it was not for to get the kingship, but they were fighting for dharam, for what was the right thing to do, because they had to lead the people, the subjects of the world, towards the path of dharam. Whereas Duryodhan, the fighting was entirely for a material cause. He was fighting for the throne. He was fighting for power. He was fighting for lust. Hence, already, the starting point itself, they were weak. So even though there many people had joined Duryodhan out of fear, many kings had joined Duryodhan's party out of fear, but internally in their hearts, most of them were favoring the Pandavas. And this thought, this feeling was troubling Duryodhan. अंदर से दुर्योधन जानता था, और he was uneasy. He was fearful because of this fact, because he can make them, he can subjugate them. वो उनको डरा धमका के obligate कर सकता है उनको अपने अंडर, लेकिन वो उनके मन को नहीं जीत सकता. He cannot reach their heart and change the feelings in their heart. So deep down, he and Dhritarashtra both knew that although they have so much of power and they have so much of army, and they have so many military facilities, much more than what the Pandavas had, still they were fearful, because they knew that they had lived a life of deceit. They were not confident, and they were not sure about the hearts of the commanders-in-chief of their army, whether they are really fighting with all their heart from their side or only fighting for them out of fear. So it is very significant to see the heart and please remember that Duryodhana is not an ordinary warrior. He is himself an extremely powerful military warrior. He was also not ordinary. He was equal in power. In fact, nobody could kill him, neither Yudhishthir nor Arjun, except Bhim. Itna powerful tha wo. And he knew about his strength. There was no one on planet Earth who could do that. And Krishna had already decided that he's not going to fight. Krishna said, I'm only going to be their guide and mentor. मैं अस्त्र शस्त्र नहीं उठाऊंगा. So Duryodhan thought that he's invincible, except for Bhim, nobody can kill him. Itna powerful tha. Yet there was fear in his heart. It's very important to note this on why this was happening. Okay, verse 5.
Can I read, Ishita?
Sorry?
Can I read?
Yes, please do.
धृष्टकेतुश्चेकितान काशीराजश्च वीर्यवान् पुरुजित् कुन्तिभोजश्च सैभश्च नरपुङ्गवा.
Translation.
There are also great, heroic, powerful fighters like Drishtaketu, Chekitana, Kashiraj, Purujit, Kunti Bhoja, and Saibya.
Is that Ishita?
Yes.
Okay. I can't see on the screen. Nice to see you, Ishita.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this verse is just listing the names of the fighters. And ये योद्धा हैं, महारथी हैं ये कोई ordinary warriors नहीं हैं. They are महारथीस. Specifically इनके नाम दिए गए हैं. There are also great, heroic, powerful fighters like Drishtaketu, Chekitan, Kashiraj, Purujit, Kunti Bhoj, and Shaibya. These are the sons of Kunti Bhoj are the sons of Subhadra and Shaibya are the sons of Draupadi. ये सारे महायोद्धा हैं. So Duryodhana is just describing the warriors of the opposing army. He doesn't need to describe them. Everybody can see कि सामने कौन खड़ा है और यहाँ कौन खड़ा है. Still वो एक एक महारथी का नाम ले रहा है, एक एक योद्धा का नाम ले रहा है. It's like he's revising in his mind on what's going to happen. What are the chances? What are the odds? And he's trying to remind his commanders in chief that they have to fight with all their passion. He actually wants their heart. He does not just want their military prowess or their military technique. He wants their heart. And he's doubtful whether their heart is with him or no. Okay, verse 6. Anyone?
Yeah, should I read, Anita? Neelam? युधा मन्युश्च विक्रांत उत्तमौजश्च वीर्यवान् सौभद्र द्रौपदेयश्च सर्व एव महारथ. There are the mighty Yudhamanyu, the very powerful Uttamauj, the son of Subhadra, and the sons of Draupadi. All these warriors are great chariot fighters.
Yeah, these are just names. These are, they don't require explanation. He's just taking the names of some of the very, very powerful fighters. Sons of Draupadi, sons of Subhadra. Okay, verse 7. Anyone?
मैं करूं?
जरूर करो. Yes, yes, please do.
अस्माकं तु विशिष्टा ये तानि बोधद्विजोत्तम नायका मम सैन्यस्य संज्ञार्थं तान् ब्रवीमि ते.
Verse 7 पढ़ा ना आपने?
हाँ जी. Yes.
Okay. Translation?
फिर से पढ़ो.
Yes, yes, please.
अस्माकं तु विशिष्टा ये तानि बोधद्विजोत्तम नायका मम सैन्यस्य संज्ञार्थं तान् ब्रवीमि ते.
Translation.
But for your information, O best of the Brahmanas, let me tell you about the captains who are especially qualified to lead my military force.
Yeah. So, just imagine the psychology of Duryodhan. In verses से दुर्योधन की psychology पता चलती है आपको. Why is he saying all this? खुद ही बोल रहा है जाकर उनको. That for your information, मैं आपको बता दूं. Nobody is asking him that. Still he is telling them. Why? For his own satisfaction, his own mental satisfaction. O best of the Brahmins, let me tell you about the captains who are especially qualified to lead my military force. तो पहले वो गिना रहा है opposite party के योद्धाओं को और कह रहा है कि ये देखो कितने बड़े बड़े योद्धा हैं इनके पास, और फिर कह रहा है लेकिन इनका कड़ा जवाब देने के लिए आप देखो मेरे पास कौन कौन योद्धा है who are going to fight against them. And whom is he telling all this? To his commander in chief. Dronacharya, who is well aware about these facts. Why? He's trying to instill confidence in him that we are going to win. We have more power. We are stronger than them. We are better than them. We are going to win. We feel it. He's trying to psychologically get them prepped up. You know, that we are going to win this war, so you fight with all your might and heart. Look what all I have. Look at the material benefits we have compared to the other party. Okay. I think we will stop here. We've done 7 verses. I never expected कि हम पहले ही दिन में 7 वर्स कर लेंगे chapter 1 के. Or we can do one more. 8th verse भी कर सकते हैं. Anyone?
Can I read again, Ishita?
हाँ इशिता, sure.
भवान् भीष्मश्च कर्णश्च कृपाश्च समितिं जयः अश्वत्थामा विकर्णश्च सौमदत्तिस्तथैव च. There are personalities like you, Bhishma, Karna, Kripa, Ashwathama, Vikarna, and the son of Somadatta called Bhuvishwava, who are always victorious in battle.
Yeah, and you can read the translation, the purport also.
Duryodhana mentions the exceptional heroes in the battle, all of whom are ever victorious. Vikarna is the brother of Duryodhana, Ashwathama is the son of Dronacharya, and Somadatti or Bhurishwava is the son of the king of the Balikas. Karna is the half brother of Arjuna, as he was born of Kunti before her marriage with King Pandu. Kripacharya's twin sister married Dronacharya.
So these are just the people of the dynasty that वो एक एक करके गिना रहा है. And he's saying that ये जो इसने नाम लिए हैं भीष्म, कर्ण, अश्वत्थामा, विकर्ण, सोमदत्त, they have never lost in any battle. They have always been victorious. ये उनका USP है, that they have never lost. You know, so the odds are so much in their favor that they have so many of these warriors who have always won the battle. So victory is definitely on their side. And Vikarna is significant because Vikarna is the only brother of Duryodhan who did not support him when he was when Draupadi was being disrobed. बाकी सब चुप थे, कुछ नहीं बोले, but Vikarna spoke. He was not a party to this. He objected. He was the only person from the whole sabha that was standing there, including Bhishma and Drona. उन्होंने भी object नहीं किया. That is the significance of Vikarna. Barring that, the others are just the names of the dynasty. बहुत सारे नाम हैं. So that's why this chart has been made, जो मैंने आपके सामने किया है. Verses 4 to 6 में you can read all these names. ये सब योद्धाओं के नाम हैं. And verses 7 to 9 में it shows that Bhavan is actually Dronacharya. And Dronacharya का नाम भीष्म से पहले लिया गया है. So these are all the people who are ready to lay their lives. However, the fate of all these people is already decided. We'll come to that later. Whatever Duryodhan may feel or think or count, जितना मर्जी वो calculate कर ले about his military prowess and about the facilities he has, about the warriors that he has, the outcome of the battle was already decided before the battle even began. It was already decided who's going to die and who's going to live, and who's going to win and who's going to lose. 9th and the last verse. मोनिका आप पढ़ सकते हो दोबारा.
अन्य च बहवा शूरा मर्दथे प्रयक्त जीविता नाना शास्त्र प्रहरणा सर्वे युद्ध विशारदा. There are many other heroes who are prepared to lay down their lives for my sake. All of them are well equipped with different kinds of weapons and all are experienced in military science.
Okay, you can read the purport also.
As far as the others are concerned, like Jaidarth, Kritvarma and Salya, all are determined to lay down their lives for Duryodhan's sake. In other words, it is already concluded that all of them would lie in the battle of Kurukshetra for joining the party of sinful Duryodhan. Duryodhan was, of course, confident of his victory on account of the above mentioned combined strength of his friends.
So everybody except Duryodhan feels that they are going to die and win the battle. But somehow Duryodhan is the only one who is confident that he is going to win. Any guesses why? Why does he feel that way? So today, the 9th verse was the last verse of the day, and we can open for discussions now or questions. So, what is the reason of Duryodhan's confidence? इतना confidence क्यों है उसे? If you read this last 9th verse का अगर आप purport पढ़ते हैं, Duryodhan was of course confident of his victory on account of all these above mentioned combined strengths. So it's already concluded that all of them will die in the battle of Kurukshetra for joining the party of the sinful Duryodhan. Yet he is confident of his victory. Why? Any ideas?
He's confident because of Bhishma Pitama, maybe because he has Ichha Mrityu Vardhan.
Can you repeat that, please?
I feel that he is confident because Bhishma Pitama is on his side and he has got the Ichha Mrityu Vardhan also, and he's one of the greatest warriors across all planets. Maybe because of that. No?
Anybody else?
May I say? दुर्योधन को अपने से ज्यादा जो बाकी लोग थे, जो भीष्मिता में या जो भी बड़े बड़े योद्धा थे, टीचर थे, उनके ऊपर इतना कॉन्फिडेंस था, शायद कहीं ना कहीं उसको अपने ऊपर नहीं था, इसलिए उसको लगता था कि मैं इनकी सहारे से, इनकी शक्ति से, इनके उससे मैं जीत जाऊंगा. ठीक है, लेकिन जो उसके लिए लड़ रहे थे वो कहीं ना कहीं दिल में ये बात जानते थे कि वो गलत पार्टी को साथ दे रहे हैं, वो गलत कर रहे हैं, पर चूंकि कुछ राजा ऐसे थे जो उसके कुछ एहसान था जिनके ऊपर, या कुछ उसे डर के लड़ तो उसकी साइड में रहे थे, लेकिन कहीं ना कहीं वो दिल में था कि हम गलत कर रहे हैं, इसलिए उनको ये तो पता था कि हम मरने वाले हैं क्योंकि हम गलत आदमी का साथ दे रहे हैं. दुर्योधन को अपने से ज्यादा इन लोगों के ऊपर विश्वास था, जितने भी महायोद्धा है उनके साथ.
But we have seen in all these 9 verses now that he was doubting them. He was doubting their hearts.
Because जब तक अपने के ऊपर कॉन्फिडेंस नहीं हो ना, जब अपने ऊपर कॉन्फिडेंस नहीं होता और दूसरों के सहारे हम जब कोई काम करते हैं तो उसमें हमें डाउट ही रहता है हमेशा. जैसे पांडव.
My question is different. What was the reason of his confidence? Why was he? Duryodhan was of course confident of his victory.
Account of ever mentioned combined strength of his friends. किसको था कि मेरे जो friends हैं वो सब मेरे साथ हैं, इसलिए मैं जीत जाऊंगा.
Anybody else?
Is arrogance?
Yeah, Vanita. Because ये एक धर्म युद्ध था, तो दुर्योधन को कॉन्फिडेंस था कि दूसरी साइड कृष्णा है, वो कभी भी अगेंस्ट धर्म अपने द्रोणाचार्य और पितामह को कभी नहीं मारेंगे और वो नहीं मरेंगे तो वो कभी लूज नहीं करेगा बैटल को. आई थिंक उसको ये रीजन था.
ओके, वाई जी आप कुछ कह रहे थे?
I think it was just his arrogance.
Yes, bang on.
Okay.
Yes. When your arrogance is just a form of lust. So
Okay.
when you are overpowered by lust, your intelligence gets clouded. And because of that clouded intelligence, you have the wrong confidence and the wrong judgment and the wrong feelings that all is well and all is going to be fine. हम कहते हैं ना मति भ्रष्ट हो जाती है. When you are overindulgent in lust, then you lose all intelligence of discrimination of right and wrong, and you get into a false cloud of things are going to go the way you want it to go. He was so overpowered by envy for the Pandavas. He was so lustful after power, the throne of Hastinapur, that it blinded his intelligence. And despite all indications, all clear indications, all omens going in the favor of the Pandavas and going against Kauravas, still he kept on feeling, and he was convinced that he's going to win. So this is the story of our life too. All of us are in this false cloud of all is well, you know, Three Idiots की जो movie थी. We are made to feel that सब ठीक होगा, all is well. अपने आप, without taking any concrete steps, without taking any, making any inquiries, without trying to find out what needs to be done. Nobody is giving us solutions on how all is going to be well. It's just all will be well. Isn't it? Isn't this what all WhatsApp messages talk about? Positive सोचो, positive ही देखो, सब ठीक हो जाएगा. Solution नहीं दे रहे हैं. कैसे होगा नहीं बता रहे हैं. बस सब ठीक हो जाएगा. बस वो ना सोचने से ही सब ठीक हो जाएगा. अपने आप ही सब ठीक हो जाएगा. बिना कुछ किए, बिना कुछ जाने, बिना कुछ inquire किए. All positive thinking seminars teach you and train you how to temporarily fix your solution, your problems. Just do this, just do that. Just don't think about negative things. Just don't meet negative people, and all will be well. You know, this is it's a monkey renunciation. Falgu Vairagya. It's what the Shastra says. You know, the monkey does not follow any rules and regulations, and he says, I don't believe in marriage. I'm not going to get married or indulge in anything. I'm a renunciate. Look, I don't need a house, I don't need anything. And the very next moment, he's running after food, running after a female monkey, mating, trying to hide in fear when somebody comes to oppress him. So he's doing all of the three things, all of the eating, sleeping, mating, and defending activities. But he feels he's a renunciate. He has no attachments to the world. He's a free bird. And काफी हद तक we have the same propensity. So, of course, we will, this is just the beginning. As the Bhagavad Gita unfolds, we will get the solutions on how to fix this mentality. First, to acknowledge and realize that we have this mentality, and then how to fix it. Because Bhagavad Gita is a 100% practical manual. It's not a theory. It is 100% a to-do manual. What to do, how to do, where to do, when to do, why to do. That's what Bhagavad Gita is. So with that, we will close today. I hope, well, it's the first time, so I really don't know how it went on. I have made these slides. I hope it was helpful with the slides. Do you think we should continue using the slides? That's the only way I know how to present it.
Very nice, and I think yes, we should continue because it creates more lasting impression. Because while we are reading, I feel if you have also written matter in front of you, then you know वो ज़्यादा register हो जाता है. And I really loved your class as always, and it was great. Very good.
So I don't know everything about the Mahabharata. Let me make a disclaimer in the beginning only. बहुत वास्ट है महाभारत और कौन किसका बेटा था कौन किसका क्या था all that I don't know. However, if you want to know and you ask me a question, I can always answer that in the next class after finding out, you know, studying or whatever. So I will not know all of these details. However, related to the Bhagavad Gita, whatever needs to be known, I can share. So with that, let's say our closing prayers for the day. Does anybody have anything else to say? We will have our next class next Thursday. Again, 9 verses हमने कर दिए आज. I'm feeling very happy.
Same here. Same here. Feeling very happy. The PowerPoint presentation was like very useful. Keep in your memory the things, memorize the things.
We retain it for rather than just text.
It is very helpful and it will always be helpful. We can again see the recording and just revise the things. It is very good, very helpful.
और हमने first class में ही 9 verses कर लिए. I'm just happy about that.
Looking forward for next Thursday.
Yeah, sure.
So we will be
I'm
very
also very
punctual.
happy, yeah.
We'll be maintaining our time as today.